দর্শক আমন্ত্রণ জানাচ্ছি চ্যানেল 24 এর নিয়মিত আয়োজন মুখোমুখিতে। মুখোমুখিতে আজকে আমরা কথা বলবো রোহিঙ্গা ইস্যু নিয়ে। আর এই বিষয়ে কথা বলার জন্য আমাদের সাথে একজন বিশেষ অতিথি আছেন এবং তিনি ইউএনএইচস এর ডেপুটি হাই কমিশনার হিসেবে কাজ করছেন, ক্লে ক্লেমেন্টস। ওয়েলকাম টু দ্য শো।
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and Bangladesh, Dhaka, Cox's Bazar is nothing new to you because if I'm not wrong, you had opportunity to work for the UNHCR around 1992 in Bangladesh. Please share your experience.
I did. I was very fortunate. I was actually seconded to the agency. It was my first experience with UNHCR, and I, at the time, was working with the State Department, the U.S. government, working on refugee issues, humanitarian issues. And this was just a few months, a year after the Rohingya started coming into Bangladesh again. And I was deployed as part of the emergency team. I started off in Dhaka as an external relations officer and talking with people like yourself and the press about what was going on in the camps and what was happening and how Bangladesh was assisting. And then I had the opportunity actually to go down to Cox's Bazar and be deployed there, working as something they call a protection officer, someone who's looking after and working with the camps in charge on security and other issues. It was a life-changing experience.
Comparing 1992 to 2019, I mean, it's been a long time. You're in the same page, but the crisis, do you see it differently, or is all the same? All the needs are same, all the demands are same, all the protection, everything is same, or there's a lot of changes?
Well, some things are similar and other things are different. Of course, back in the early 90s, it was 200 to 250,000 refugees that came to this country to seek safety. What is happening now in terms of what Cox's Bazar, Teknaf, Ukiah, the district is receiving is nearly 1 million people. So what's not the same? What's not the same are some of the stories of tragedy, of loss, of people who have really left everything, who have been refugees in some cases more than once. Some of the people that I met had actually been to this country before and then of course returned. What is also not a change is the generosity of the community. I'm always impressed because it's not just refugees we're working with. We talk often with Bangladeshis about what they're facing, what is difficult for them in terms of the host community, and this is a strain. You know, it's like having 1 million new neighbors or a million house guests. This is not an easy situation for a country that's already strained, that in one of the poorest parts of the country is receiving so much. So that the generosity is not different between 1992 and today, certainly, and that we are very grateful. What's also similar that I find is the resilience of the people, of the refugees. They've come with very little, and some of them come with nothing. If they're lucky, they have their family members with them. Some have left their family members behind. Some have been killed. This is of great loss, of course, but they're resilient. And even I saw, you know, I've been now in the country for the last couple of days, went down to Cox's Bazar, to the camps a couple of days ago, and you talk to people and the kids are smiling and they're playing and there's life. And the parents trying to make the best sense of a very difficult situation. It's not easy living in a camp with almost nothing, but this is quite unique, I think. You know, so it's not a matter of setting up parallel systems of support, but how do you reinforce the Bangladeshi local systems to be able to withstand the kind of pressure that comes when you have that many people in a very constrained and small space. So we actually, in the last few years, have put together something called a comprehensive refugee response framework. It's civil society, it's international organizations, it's development, international financial institutions, the government, refugees at the center, private sector, business involved, really taking a different look at how we do these sorts of things. Now, what's also different is that we now have a global compact on refugees.
Right.
And what's important about that is, of course, what are we trying to do? We're trying to ease the pressures on host communities like Cox's Bazar, like Teknaf, like Ukiah. We're trying to make it possible for refugees to be self-reliant and not necessarily depend on an agency like UNHCR or the local government to such an extent. We're trying to make it possible for there to be solutions. not necessarily solutions in Bangladesh, solutions elsewhere and perhaps third countries. We're also trying to make it possible for people to go home, voluntarily, safely, and in dignity. So those are some of the big changes in terms of how we're set up now that we weren't 27 years ago.
Right. On this discussion, part of discussion, we'll take a break. I'll come back and discuss more. দর্শক, আমরা কথা বলছিলাম কেলি ক্লেমেন্টসের সাথে, কথা বলছিলাম যে গত 20-30 বছরে কিভাবে শরণার্থী ডিলিংয়ের বিষয়টি অনেকটা চেঞ্জ হয়েছে, কোন কোন জায়গায় পরিবর্তনগুলো আসছে। আমরা এই বিষয়ে আরও কথা বলবো, তবে একটা বিরতির পর। সাথে থাকুন, ফিরছি একটু পর। আমন্ত্রণ আরেকবার মুখোমুখিতে আমাদের সাথে আছেন ইউএনএইচস ডেপুটি হাই কমিশনার কেলি ক্লেমেন্টস। ওয়েলকাম টু দ্য শো। সো ইউ টকড অ্যাবাউট some changes and some challenges around last 20-30 years. I mean, 200,000 people, it's quite adjustable for the local. You also talked about that, but when it's like more than 1 million people, unwanted weather changes that take place, say for example, cyclone or rain. So there are a lot of question and security issue as well. How do you see all these challenges? Because the security in terms of unwanted weather changes, that is not sort of human can stop it, and some fundamentalists can take some extra advantage of these poor people, and when they are traumatized, some people can teach them something, and so that yes, we have to take our revenge, whoever killed my brother or mother or sister or anything. So how these things can be tackled when we have so many people in so small place?
Well, you talk about challenges, and certainly there are the controllable challenges that one can deal with, and there are things that are out of our control, human control, and weather is one of them. I have to say, the last couple of years, it has been nothing short of extraordinary to see the collaboration, cooperation with what the Army, together with the local authorities, the deputy commissioner and others, working very closely with the organizations, including ourselves on the ground, to try to prepare. To try to prepare, for example, shelter. When I was here in December of 2017, it was right after the influx of over 700,000 people. And people were living in hills that were just so precarious. So we're kind of working a little bit in an emergency within an emergency. You have to always be prepared for what is an annual weather pattern that is pretty predictable in this part of the world, but at the same time try to have the resilience of the people to be able to withstand. And I'm happy to say that in terms of the loss of life and the impact on the hosts as well as the refugee population has been relatively minimal the last couple of years, and that is nothing short of extraordinary. Now, when you talk about issues related to, you have a lot of people in a very contained space. What we try to do in any situation like this is to normalize it as quickly as possible. Make it possible for example, for children to have some sort of education. When we were in the camps a couple of days ago talking to girls, young women, young men, they said, we want to be busy. We want to be doing something. We want to contribute. We don't want to be idle. And so that's very important. So to the extent that you have activities and ways, and for example, some kind of small income livelihood support where families can actually be producing for themselves, and this makes it much less likely then that you have some of the security situation that you could encounter should you have a population that hasn't had any aid, that isn't able to support themselves, that has an uneducated population and so on. And that would be the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah, on this discussion we have to take another break. We'll come back and discuss about more. দর্শক, আমরা এই পর্যায়ে আরো একটা বিরতি যাচ্ছি মুখোমুখির, সাথেই থাকুন, ফিরছি একটু পর। আমন্ত্রণ আরেকবার মুখোমুখিতে আমাদের সাথে আছেন বিশেষ অতিথি ইউএনএইচস এর Deputy High Commissioner Kelly Clements. So welcome to the show. And as we've been talking that if they can be given something to do and they spend good time, things will be pretty much in control of us, or I mean humans. To do that, I mean government had a proposal to bring some of those people to the Bhashanchar. I believe it's quite a discussion we are having for nearly 1 year. And government also built, according to they claim that they have built enough things and with enough measures. So do you think it's a good idea? If yes or not, or how do you see this? And Out of those 1.2 million people or 1.1 million people, 100,000 people in separate place, will that create another sort of mistrust when they are having a good life, which they are supposed to have their own country?
Well, one can appreciate very much the desire of the government to want to decongest a very, very congested area. I mean, to have, as we've talked about, I was quite astounded with just the breadth in terms of the settlements now for the Rohingya refugees in Teknaf and Ukiah. So decongestion is a good thing. We do this, we look at this in terms of other refugee situations around the world, and you need families to have a certain amount of space. So that's to be commended in terms of the government looking for other options. Last visited the island in September of 2018. We have made ourselves available along with our technical experts to go and to do some assessments, because we understand there has been great progress made. Let's see what exactly is the situation on the island. I want to bring, though, the refugees back into this, because I think, getting back to the latter point of your question, it's going to take some communication, I think, in terms of what is their intents, their desire, return to Myanmar at some point, what is available for them, for example, on the island and that sort of thing. And I think that communication is going to be quite important. It's important, for example, when we're talking about issues related to voluntary return, to have some good contact between the Myanmar authorities and the refugees to talk about what they're prepared to provide for them in their areas of origin. We also are working very closely with the government on other options that might be able to decongest the area, and are very attentive to issues, for example, related to the environment, because we realize the impact. One of the changes since I was here just a couple of years ago, which will help a lot, is turning from what had been very heavily wood burning in terms of cooking for refugees now to LPG, which of course will be a big environmental impact saver. But these sorts of things, we have to look at how we work very closely with the communities to make sure that everybody understands what the options are.
Right. And what about, as you have a global experience, and it's been nearly 30 years, if I'm not wrong, and you work for the Bureau of Population, Refugee and Migration for state government, U.S. government. So you've been to different places. You have experience of looking or observing or researching scenarios in different countries. What are the other countries, in your observation, that they have made such placement from one place to another and trying to make it secure for the refugees, and it really worked out, or it failed?
Good question. Yes, I've been doing this for a while now, and it depends in parts of the world. I mean, what we've found about refugees is they don't want to go very far from home, because by and large, they want to be able to go home when the conditions are right, when it's possible to go in peace and security. We see this, for example, in the Syria situation. We have over 5 million refugees that are outside of Syria, in Lebanon and Jordan, Iraq, Turkey, and they are very close, of course, to Syria. Some are going back and forth to see, is it possible to return yet, is it not? And each government, we talk about camps a lot, but most refugees are actually not in camps. They're in urban environments. And so this means, of course, a different type of protection and aid. It's individual support. It's making sure, for example, that they're able to pay rent in some circumstances, or they're able to work to be able to make a little bit of a living for their families, to be able to send them to school and that sort of thing. The hosts, by and large, have been tremendous in terms of, because the majority, 85% of the world's refugees, and we're talking about a situation now in terms of forcibly displaced, that is record-setting. It's over 70 million people around the world that have been displaced, forced to move because of persecution or war or conflict. And this is, of course, the situation here in this country is one of the world's largest, but there are others, including, for example, Turkey is the largest refugee host in the world today. They have a combination of ways to provide support. through camps on the southeast part of the country to very heavy urban population in terms of the refugees. And so there are different ways to assist depending upon the context of the particular situation we're dealing with. Each situation and context is different. And we try, of course, to support very much the local communities who are providing this kind of aid. They're the first responders in many cases. But to be able to come in and not just look at it from a humanitarian quick impact type, but to look at something that's slightly longer term. Because refugees, the average number of years that refugees are in displacement now are well over 20. So we have to be thinking a little bit longer term.
Yeah, it's quite pivotal,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
So on this discussion, we have to end this part of the show, and we'll go for next episode because we have a lot of ongoing issues. And when we come back in the next episode, we'll definitely discuss more of your experience, and especially in the fund management, because we have refugees around the world and how to grab funds. And for the last quite 2 or 3 JRP, Bangladesh didn't get all the funds. So we have to say goodbye for today. And thank you, and see you in the next episode.
Nice to see you. Thank you very much.
দর্শক, আমরা কথা বলছিলাম রোহিঙ্গা সংকট নিয়ে, তার অভিজ্ঞতা নিয়ে, বিশ্বজুড়ে কিভাবে শরণার্থী সংকট নানান ধরনের সংকট তৈরি করছে। পাশাপাশি আমরা পরবর্তী পর্বেও উনি আমাদের সাথে অতিথি হিসেবে থাকবেন এবং আমরা কথা বলবো যে এই যে শরণার্থী সংকট রয়েছে, এখানে অনেক অর্থের প্রয়োজন রয়েছে, সেটা কিভাবে দেশগুলো কিংবা জাতিসংঘ বিভিন্ন ডোনারদের কাছ থেকে নিতে পারে সেই বিষয়ে। আজকে এখানে বিরতি নিচ্ছি, আগামী পর্বে আবার ফিরবো। আমাদের সাথে একই অতিথি থাকবেন। দেখা হবে আগামী পর্বে।